Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the panel session, Participatory Methods and the Voice of Lived Experience. Firstly, we're going to be hearing from Rachel, who's online. So Dr. Rachel Black is joining us remotely. And then after her presentation, we'll be handing over to Kate and Jose, who will be presenting and who are live in the room. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, and I'm really sorry that I'm not there. I got struck down by COVID on Sunday, unfortunately. So I was really hoping to be there. So I'm very sorry not to be there. I hope it's been a really great couple of days. Yes, so I'm Rachel Black, and I work in the Centre for Care at the University of Sheffield. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we've included sort of a range of voices and experiences in our policy engagement activity. And before I started at the centre, I undertook a PhD using participatory methods with unpaid carers, family carers, people with learning disabilities. So although I'm not going to talk about that today, I'm very happy to kind of pick that up in the chat. I know that we're going to be talking about participatory methods, so I'm very happy to chat that through as well. Okay, so I'm sorry, my slides are not moving. Here we go. The Centre for Care. The Centre for Care is an ESRC funded centre that was launched at the end of 2021, and it comprises of 5 universities across England, 3 major charities and the Office of National Statistics, plus a number of other policy and practice partners. And we research a range of issues looking at sort of social care, the care workforce, digital care, unpaid care, but with a real sort of principle and drive that the research should make a difference. And I think that's kind of demonstrating the fact that my role is has been built in from the outset, somebody in a kind of impact role. So we're looking to make a kind of impact on policy, on what people do, on their practice, and also on sort of understanding about sort of social care more generally. But today I'm going to talk specifically around our sort of policy work that we've already sort of started in the centre. So there are a number of ways to engage with policy makers, and I've got a sort of list of things there, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into all of those, but if people would like to pick up that in the discussion later about the ways in which we engage with policymakers, then please do give me a shout and we can talk about those. But today, I'm going to look specifically around how we engaged with Select Committee and House of Lords Committee's inquiries and how we sort of brought in different voices and experiences there, but also what could have gone better. We're still learning, so would again be really interested to hear your sort of thoughts and feedback on the approach that we're taking and whether that could be done differently in any way. So sort of thinking, why are we thinking about this? Why are we thinking about sort of broadening out the work that we do? And I guess the main sort of focus and drive is this idea of valuing all types of evidence. Obviously, we have this kind of range of academic evidence and experience that we can draw on to submit to inquiries and submit to sort of policymakers' questions, but we know that there's also the voices of people with lived experience and the practice wisdom of people who work in the sector that maybe don't always get heard, don't always get the opportunity to engage, and we want to make sure that we're drawing on that to really make our submissions as relevant as possible for the people who are going through these experiences. And that centres a range of voices. It's they're not just academia that's speaking there, but we're drawing that together across a number of different experiences, and it's grounded very much in the up to date and the day to day. Obviously, academic research may have happened a couple of years previously. We know that an awful lot has happened since then. So speaking to people, engaging with people means that we know what's happening kind of in the here and now. What are people going through at the moment? It's expanded the networks that we have. We now have groups of care workers. We have groups of people with lived experience who are now sort of part of the centre, who are part of our discussions and our work going forward. So it helps to keep us very much embedded in what's happening and what people are going through. And I firmly believe it has enriched the evidence. The evidence that we've submitted have been sort of layered up with lots of different types of experiences. Those kind of examples, the case studies or quotes that run through the evidence, means that it feels more strong, it feels sort of more real, really, when we're trying to get that in front of policymakers. So just a few sort of recent examples over the last kind of 9-10 months of where we've submitted evidence to inquiries and where we've worked in collaboration with others. So the first example is where we have spoken to people with lived experience in a number of different ways. And I'm actually going to talk about this in a bit more detail on the next slide as a bit of a sort of case study. But this was for the House of Lords Adult Social Care Committee inquiry, which looked at the invisibility of social care, this notion that social care is hidden, that it's not fully understood or considered, both in the kind of public sphere and in terms of policymakers. And so I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. For the Bayes Committee's inquiry into the UK labour market, we drew on the practice wisdom of social care workers and also people who sort of ran social care organisations, supported living organisations, because we really wanted to kind of be able to draw out of a kind of broad submission about labour markets what exactly was happening in social care, an area that is very much kind of facing a huge amount of staff shortage, and what does that mean for the people who work in the sector? What does it mean for the people who deliver these services? And so we ran discussion groups with care workers to feed into that submission. And finally, we worked with one of our policy and practice partners, Britsits, who are an organisation who look at family reunification following migration law change in 2012. And we submitted to the House of Lords Justice and Home Affairs Committees on Family Migration. And that was a really strong submission because they had such a range of up-to-date experiences. They could link us in with people who were going through some of these experiences. And it also, as a kind of process, helped us as a centre and them as one of our partners to just kind of understand how we might work together, the ways in which we work. So it's a really sort of nice, tangible piece of work to do together to be able to kind of learn more about each other and work together. Now, the Lifting the Veil submission that I mentioned earlier, so this was quite a big piece of work for us in that it drew on a lot of the research that we have already done prior to the centre as academics and are going to be doing more in the centre. There was a section on co-production, there was a section on unpaid care, and then this sort of sense of perception around social care. Why is it kind of kept to one side? And so we wanted to understand, what did that mean for people who were either caring for somebody or in receipt of care and support themselves? And so we held a series of discussion events. We had some in person, there's a picture of one there, and we had some online, some in the university, some we went out to people and met them in community groups that were already meeting. And we paid people in vouchers for their time. And I'll again talk a bit more about payments in the kind of reflections at the end. I then took away the sort of discussions and also the academic evidence that our researchers pointed us to and pulled that together in the writing up. And it came to quite a big sort of chunky submission. So as a way of disseminating it, we did disseminate the full submission, but we also created an easy read, accessible summary and a PowerPoint presentation for our policy partners and practice partners to host on their websites. And so we thought about the ways in which we could share what we'd written up in a way that was a bit more accessible. Following the release of the report, we've now done a podcast with Baroness Andrews, who was who led that committee and led that inquiry. So that's something that we're going to be releasing on our website quite soon. And also we saw an impact from the evidence in that some of our evidence was then used in the recommendations in the final report. And I do think that some of that is because of the kind of strength and breadth of the evidence of including a range of voices and really kind of grounding it in lived experience. So reflections and learning. So we go through a process of kind of planning for each of these submissions. We have a form that we fill in and we think about who could we include, where could people be involved in this? So, and I'd say earlier, I do think that leads to stronger submissions, but there are also issues and it's not perfect. It tends to be us kind of deciding whether to submit, deciding who we can invite. It would be great to flip that. It would be great for people to come to us and say, this submission is open, can we work with the centre? So there's still ways for us to go. The timescales can be tight, and sometimes that means that we're not able to involve people as thoroughly throughout. It would be nice to invite people to take part in the writing with us. It would be nice for people to be able to see and comment on drafts more, but unfortunately, obviously, due to the timescales, that's not always the case. Paying people for their time, vouchers aren't always the best way. Sometimes they suit some people, sometimes they don't, but payment structures can make that difficult within the university to be able to give people cash for their time if that's what they prefer. And also locations. We invited people into the university and about 4 people came. When we went out to the community groups, there was about 25 people there. So thinking about how do we get out to people, how do we go to them? And also, as I said, we converted the submission to make it more accessible by having easy read summaries. But how do we make the submission itself more accessible? There are still quite academic texts sometimes, even though we are trying to write them for a broader audience. And so there are still kind of considerations there. So we're kind of moving towards a way of working, but still learning, and we'll be really interested to hear your thoughts. And I look forward to the discussion and the questions later. And there's my contact details if anybody would want to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I don't know if you could hear that, but everyone was applauding and is looking really delighted. So thank you so much. Okay, brilliant. I'm just going to switch to the next presentation. Kate and Jose, I'd like to invite you to speak. You can stand up here or stay sitting wherever you're most comfortable. So get to the next slide or just if you use the arrow keys then. Yeah, I'll stay here. So.
Hi, it's great to be here. I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting us to share our work. It's really great to have the opportunity to do that. Really interesting to hear about your work, Rachel, and I'm sorry you're not able to be here with us in person. I hope you're fully recovered soon, and I look forward to connecting again later. I'm really pleased to see that 100% of the presenters on this panel are from Yorkshire. Just had to get that in. So I'm Kate James. I'm one of the Policy and Research Officers at Migration Yorkshire. We have developed a migration peer research toolkit, which is what I'm going to share with you today. My colleague Jose is with me. He will be speaking in a few minutes. I'll let him introduce himself in a few moments. So I'm just going to give you a quick little bit of background to who we are and why we developed the toolkit, and then hopefully if the technology works, I'll be able to give you a quick guided tour of it online. So first of all, I imagine probably most of you won't know who Migration Yorkshire is, what we are, what we do. So we are a local authority-led partnership. We work with a range of organisations across our region with the aim of achieving the most positive outcomes of migration for everyone in the Yorkshire and Humber region. A lot of this work focuses on supporting migrant integration, and there are equivalent organisations all over the country. So in the other 8 English regions, plus Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there is an equivalent organisation in all those places. So just to give you a little sort of understanding of what we do in terms of some practical examples, it's things like coordinating the resettlement schemes for refugees at a regional level. So we were very involved in the Syrian programme and now the Afghan scheme. We coordinate a refugee integration service. We work with local partners to deliver that, which provides support for new refugees. We support local authorities with asylum seeker dispersal. We help to coordinate the National Transfer Scheme for the placement of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. At the moment, we're doing a lot of work with local authorities, supporting them on Homes for Ukraine, and also in terms of welcoming people from Hong Kong. We deliver a lot of training to frontline staff who come into contact with people with a migrant background, and we also run an annual integration festival. We also produce a lot of data and research to help support our partners, and Jose and I are part of the team which leads on that aspect of our work. So at the moment, we're very fortunate that we have funding from the EU Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund to deliver a programme of research, which we're doing in partnership with some academic institutions. These are the University of Huddersfield, Leeds Beckett University, and the Institute for Public Policy Research. Also the Centre on Migration, Policy and Society here at the University of Oxford, or COMPAS, who some of you will have heard of. And it's through them that we're here today, so we're really grateful for that connection. Some of the outputs from this research have already been published and they're available on our website, so do have a look. There's some really interesting types of outputs. I think, I've been hearing a lot over the last couple of days about trying to present information, research in a more accessible and engaging way. And, the University of Huddersfield, for example, who've done work on refugee housing pathways, they've produced an interactive documentary, which is on our website, and also a comic sort of illustrating some of the experiences that we heard about in the research about people's housing pathways. So that's a little bit about our work. Sort of big part of this over the past few years has been that we've been taking more of what we call a peer research approach to our work. And I'll tell you in a minute a little bit more about the toolkit, which sort of explains more about that, using this model to do migration research. I'm sure you're probably all very familiar with the concept of peer research, but sort of to be clear about our understanding of that, we mean research done by people or partly done by people with lived experience of the topic of the research. We've worked with peer, and we sometimes call them community researchers, for a few years now, and there's been a little bit of interest in what we're doing, so we just thought it might be useful to share some of our learning, really. So the toolkit that we've developed is mainly aimed at research managers or people from academic institutions who are thinking about using a peer research model. And also some of the content might be of interest to people who have lived experience of migration, who are interested in being peer researchers themselves. And although I should say, obviously, our experience specifically relates to migration research, but I think a lot of it is applicable in other contexts as well. So hopefully, you might find it useful if you're thinking about doing this kind of work. We don't think we're the experts by any means at all. We know that lots of other organisations are doing very similar work to us. We're all on a journey, I think, with this. And so we've shared a lot of learning from other organisations in our toolkit as well, so I'll show you some of that. We've tried to give tips based on our learning, talked about things we might do differently next time, made lots of mistakes, we're still learning, as I say. And also, before I go any further, I just want to sort of acknowledge really that I think there are lots of debates around the different language, the terms that are used in this area. So peer research, community research, co-production. Don't think we can do justice to those today. I don't think we have time, but we tend to use the term peer research just because it seems to be the most commonly kind of used and understood term. But I do want to say that the main reason we decided to use this model is that we've just really recognised the value of involving people with lived experience of the research topic in the design and the implementation of the research. We also think it's really important to incorporate those perspectives from the beginning of the project, and I think that's one of our tips really that we've learned, that it doesn't work so well if people come in halfway through the project. It's ideally you want people there from the beginning. And ultimately, we just think this helps us better understand the migrant groups that we are researching. So we've tried to make sure our peer researchers have the chance to be involved, at least to some extent, in each stage of the research. So, as I said, design, also fieldwork, analysis and dissemination. Some of our researchers have written blogs which reflect on this. Jose is going to talk a bit more about those in a minute. And the toolkit also includes some reflections from our research partners on their experience of working with the researchers, because it's something they've not done before, and the value that they've brought, to the research projects. So I'm just going to give a quick quote from Lucy Mort, who is a senior research fellow at the Institute for Public Policy Research, about, just an example of the value that this brought to their project, really. So she says it was a peer researcher who flagged one of our key findings, that to reduce social isolation, it is necessary to support migrants to connect with their existing connections and communities, even if they live in another country. And IPPR have developed a social connection toolkit to help sort of local authorities and other organisations find ways to bring people together from different backgrounds. And obviously that piece of work involved peer researchers. And then other, ways in which they've involving peer researchers of added value is helping us access communities that we would have really struggled to access otherwise, and just generally really adding a much deeper and kind of richer insight into the analysis. So if I can get this to work, I'll just quickly give you a quick tour of the toolkit itself. We've got various other toolkits on our website as well, by the way, not just this one, so have a browse. So just a bit of an explanation first of the illustration on the front. A participant in a previous research project that we did drew a tree. It was a kind of creative project where we asked people to draw things. They explained that the tree, in their context, symbolised an important social space where people gather to discuss community affairs. So this idea inspired this illustration. This is a different drawing, which we commissioned to accompany our first blog. And in our context, we kind of talked about this with the peer and community researchers. This image of people talking beneath the tree, it sort of represents our aspiration, really, to a kind of collaborative teamwork model and sort of working towards more horizontal power relations, where ideally researcher expertise that comes from lived experience is valued in the same way as other research knowledge. And the drawing also inspired the title of our toolkit, which is Collaborating in the Shade of a Tree. So we wanted to make sure the toolkit included the perspectives of the peer researchers themselves. Obviously, that was really important. And as I said, they've contributed in the form of blogs. And the topics include experience of applying for a peer researcher job, research ethics and positionality, those kind of topics. So I'm just going to try and show you José's blog now, which you can read at your leisure later. There you go. And again, you can see that we've got another brilliant illustration. I should say the illustrator is called Hani. He is originally from Eritrea. He's now living in Ethiopia as a refugee. And we know him through Tesfalem, who's one of our other researchers. As you can see, he's a really, really talented artist. And we've commissioned him to draw some of these illustrations to accompany the blogs. And so that's José's blog, which is his perspective on taking a peer research approach. So let's get back to the main page. So this is going to test how easy this is to navigate, but you can generally get back to the landing page of the toolkit. If you go to the top of the page, click on the title, it should take you back. And because it's web-based, I think things we've produced before have been kind of standalone documents, but we're really hoping this will be fairly dynamic and evolve over time, and we can add to it as we hear about, with a good practice in different kind of research institutions. So I'll just show you the main kind of way to navigate. So there's 4 topics, as you can see, along the bottom. You basically just click on each one to navigate your way through. You get a contents menu on the left-hand side. Also, just on the front page, if you sort of scroll down to the bottom, you can see that all the tools that form part of the toolkit are listed together. So if you just want a quick look to see what there is, and you're looking for something like a sample job description or some tips on doing interviews or something, you can just quickly find those things, so that might be useful. So just going back to the topics, the first one is embarking on a peer research approach. So if you're just thinking about doing this and you're wondering how to get started, this is where you would begin. There's a bit of an overview of different possible approaches to doing this. And I'm going to just try now to share a quick video with you. We've sort of outlined our peer research journey, if you like, so we're in a very different place now from when we started. And I'm going to see if I can get this video to play for you. Now, some of you might recognise Olga, who spoke this morning at one of the sessions. And she worked with us previously on a South Yorkshire Roma project. Olga is a Roma advocate, interpreter and researcher. She has many different hats. And she's been kind enough to kind of reflect on her experiences of working as a peer researcher and share those with us. And I did check with her that she's happy for me to show this today. So let me see if I can get this to start where I want it to start.
Sorry, Yorkshire to go.
Sorry.
So your project different. We work with
Right.
organizations and partnerships.
Is the sound okay?
And eventually ended up working with Migration.
I'll just pause it while we can work out how to get it louder. Sorry. Do we need to change the sound on? Where do I do that? Should I go down to the full screen? Or... Sorry, bear with us. Technical difficulties. Should we change the sound on there? Will that help? What do you think?
I think so.
Try that. Great, thank you. Right, let's try this, see if this is better.
Migration Yorkshire. We worked on many different projects, but one of the projects we worked on was called the South Yorkshire Roma project.
Is that still a bit quiet, or? It's okay, right. Okay.
It was all about addressing the gaps in the policies, Roma inclusion, and highlighting the barriers they face and kind of trying to find out the solutions. So I recruited the participants and led the focus groups. And we did lots of work together, lots of good work together, and I believe we made an impact on the Roma community and on the professionals that actually work with Roma community. So when I was approached by Migration Yorkshire to work on this project, I was really happy and privileged, because I thought that it's good that I recognize that Roma people have a lot to say, and that they are interested in what I want to do, how I want to help the Roma people. Kind of, they saw my expertise in that area and my potential. And that was really good. It made me feel really valued and heard, you know. So, which is important, obviously, because if you want to work with such a community as a Roma community, you need a Roma person to do this job. One of the benefits of having a Roma person to actually recruit the Roma community is the fact that I am Roma. So that means the Roma people, and also the community development workers. So the Roma people in that particular community knew me, they trusted me, they know that I want the best for them. And the fact is that the Migration Yorkshire probably would really struggle to recruit these participants, and that the only way to get really close and really have a good Roma engagement is through using somebody who is from the community, from the same background. So there's lots of benefits to it. So Migration Yorkshire were one of the first organizations that actually helped me to realize how big is the issue with Roma exclusion in policies, and kind of made me feel like there are other people that care, that we have rights, and we can actually make a difference by working with such organizations.
Well, I'll just pause that there, because otherwise we'll run out of time, but I just thought it was useful to share Olga's perspective there. And she sort of puts it really succinctly, I think, what some of the benefits are of involving peer researchers in this work. See if I can navigate back. So I'll just go back to the main menu and just to take you quickly through the last couple of topics, just so that you can see what else is available in the toolkit. So there's a section on recruitment. So if you're sort of thinking you'd like to work with peer researchers and you're just not really sure where to start in terms of recruitment, then you might want to have a look at this page. We've got various tips sort of based on our learning from our experience, and also some tools, so things like example job descriptions and job adverts and interview questions that you might be able to adapt to your context. And Migration Yorkshire, we're all employed by Leeds City Council. That's our kind of host organisation. So obviously we have to follow their recruitment processes, which can seem quite formal and daunting and off-putting, perhaps to somebody who's not used to the UK labour market or context in terms of applying for jobs. So we try to think of ways to make that process a bit more kind of informal, less daunting, more friendly. Sure, there are things we could have done better, but there's a few sort of bits of learning in there that you might find useful. So the next topic is induction and training, which is again another really important topic to make sure that people are kind of properly prepared and supported for doing this work. So we've shared some of our own tips. We've also shared some external resources as well, because as I say, there are lots of other organisations doing fantastic work in this area. For example, the Centre for Society and Mental Health at King's College offers a sort of low-cost course on peer research. There's something Imperial as well. And then involving Young Londoners, they've also produced a toolkit for peer research. There's loads of really good stuff out there, and we've tried to link to as much as we can find. But If anyone knows of anything else that we haven't included, please let me know, because as I say, we want to keep adding to this and building on this over time. So obviously, yeah, it can be challenging if people arrive with different skills and experience. It's really important to tailor training to meet people's individual needs. So we've kind of shared an overview or experience of this, really, including how we've tried to offer a range of development opportunities. So Tess Fulham, for example, one of our colleagues, he set up a postgraduate migration research network, which is a spin-off from our regional migration research network. And also last year we ran what we called a research club, which was every fortnight. José used to chair this. One of the researchers would present it's like a summary of a research study, and we'd have a discussion about it. So that was really useful as well. Am I running a bit short of time? Right, yeah, because I need to give José a chance to speak, so I'll wrap up. So just to say, there's one more topic, which is learning from other organisations, where you'll find links to loads of brilliant work that's going on elsewhere, case studies from organisations like Flex, which have done like a feminist participatory action research approach. So yeah, that was a whistle-stop tour. Have a good browse later on, and I hope some of you will find it useful if you're considering this kind of work. And I'll just hand over to José now, who's going to tell you a bit more about his experience.
Thank you. Just very conscious of time. I think today we have heard many keywords across the conferences that we have had. For example, lived experiences, empathy, hope for action, or hope into action, know your audience, discussion, co-creation, collaboration. But just looking at the toolkit that we have developed, what do those words actually mean in terms of developing research? And the thing that we have done as peer researchers through the toolkit is just to bring our lived experiences to inform the development of the research project. From the very beginning of identifying what are the goals, what are the objectives, metrics in terms of that research, who should we be engaging with, what are the challenges. And I think some of the main or the key points from having a research with lived experience in every single project is that it can actually grant you access to information that otherwise you will not be able to have. Because, for example, the knowledge that a peer researcher can actually have around the communities that we are researching, the empathy, the connections that that person can actually have into that research group. So in words of one colleague from another peer researcher contributing also to the toolkit, the real benefit that has had to Migration Yorkshire up to date, for example, is people feel happy to open up to discuss new things with you that otherwise people experiencing challenging scenarios around migration, housing, etc., will not feel open to discuss with a more formal research from a university, from a government institution. So as Kate was saying, there might be some challenges at the very beginning when you are starting to work with peer researchers. But another thing that we heard today in the plenary session was the importance of starting to nourish junior researchers. And that is something really valuable, not only for example, funders like ESRC, HRC, but in terms of institutional policies. How are you feeding into or contributing for new researchers to be able to develop these projects? So peer researchers can actually bring a lot of value. I don't think that it adds so much complexity. And we have seen really good benefits in terms of Migration Yorkshire projects. So we really hope as peer researchers that the toolkit actually bring some tools for you that you can actually learn from our trial and error, previous experiences, best practice, etc. And that overall it helps you to translate hope into action, as we discussed in the morning. So that's what my 5 colleagues and I, who have been peer researchers for this particular project, would like to contribute to all of you. So 3 main messages. For example, the value that a peer researcher can actually contribute or bring into the research project. The second thing is the need for peer researchers to be involved from the very initial stages of the research project. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like a contribution or a partnership, but more perhaps in lay terms, an exploitation of perhaps that peer researcher connections, knowledge, etc. So it has to be a collaborative partnership since the very beginning. And the third one, most of us have done, for example, some research, postgraduates, etc., in terms of the topics discussed. So it brings a different perspective, a challenge in terms of the research director or the research owner. So it's kind of a well-rounded process if you involve peer researchers at the earliest stages. So, yeah. Thanks.